Oh, okay. Thanks. It's different than the other mics.
Is that the timer one? Is the other
It's a timer, and it'll mute all the
okay.
Okay. Anyway, welcome to the new commissioners. Cathy, would you do the roll call, please?
Commissioner Izetta,
Present.
Youth Member Manager,
Present.
Commissioner Mizuraka,
Aye.
Commissioner Rausch,
Present.
Vice Chair Tolbert,
Here?
Commissioner Wellender.
Present.
Let the record show that Chair Donnelly and Commissioner Cullinan are not in attendance. Thank you.
Okay, next up is the approval of the agenda. Are there any calls for changes from the committee? Is there any public comment? Then I'd like a call for a motion and a second.
I move to approve the agenda.
I second.
So if Cathy will provide the roll.
We got it. Commissioner Izetta, sorry, I slurred that. Roll call vote.
What do I say?
Yes, I.
Aye.
Youth Member Mellinger,
Yes.
Commissioner Mizuraka,
Aye.
Commissioner Tolbert,
Yes?
or Vice Chair Tolbert, Commissioner Rausch,
Aye.
Commissioner Wellender.
Aye.
The motion, thank you, the motion passes unanimously.
So now we have comments from the public, but I need to read this first. At this time, members of the public may comment on any item not appearing on the agenda. It is recommended that you keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Under state law, matters presented under this item cannot be discussed or acted upon by the Parks, Rec, and Open Space Commission at this time. For items appearing on the agenda, the public will be invited to make comments at the time the item comes up for the committee consideration. Upon being acknowledged by the chairs, please step to the podium and speak into the microphone, beginning by stating and spelling your name. Any comments?
Good evening. Richard Hodges, R-I-C-H-A-R-D, H-O-D-G-E-S. And I'm here today representing Sonoma Splash, which is the organization that manages the Sonoma Aquatic Center at the high school. I'm joined by our newest member of the board of directors, Selena Sanchez. And I'm here to introduce you today to Sonoma's newest park and the recreational opportunities that we offer. Our hope is that we can come back at the next meeting and be on the agenda and make a regularly scheduled presentation to allow discussion and conversation about what we offer at the Aquatic Center. In brief, we opened in October of 22 and have operated continuously since then. Most municipal pools are only open during the summer. We operate all year round. We have a 17-lane competition pool. We have a 90-degree heated, shallow training and therapy pool that's very popular with kids' lessons and with seniors. And in June, we opened our Aqua Park, which is our new obstacle course recreation, which is quite entertaining. During the school year, the schools use the Aquatic Center for PE, sports teams, and swim lessons, but our recreation programs include every part of the Sonoma community: seniors, adults, youth, and children. And we're partnering with all sorts of organizations across the community, including the Boys and Girls Club, the YMCA, the Rotary Club, the Mentoring Alliance, and the Vintage House. We're continuing to expand those relationships and find other partnerships within the community to sponsor recreation. Sonoma Splash's annual budget is over $1 million, and we're almost 90% of that is operating cost is staff. And most of the staff are actually lifeguards who are high school students. So we provide training and summer employment, year-round employment for high school students. So most of the dollars that we spend in our operating budget go straight back into the Sonoma community. So I'd like to play for you a quick video here in the remainder of my time so you can get a visual of what it's like at the pool. Water polo. Seniors. Halloween. That was the Adult Swim. Cold weather in the warm pool. Regular Friday pool play dates. And my time is up, but I want to see one more image, which is our aqua park. And that's what it looks like. So hope you can all take the time to come down and visit facilities, see what we do, and hope to come back in a couple of months and do a full presentation to the commission. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there additional comments from the public? Next will be a presentation about the November 2024 ballot measure by our city manager, David Gouin.
Great, thank you so much for having me. My name is David Gouin, the city manager for the city of Sonoma. I wanted to come and give you a quick update on an item I'm bringing to the city council this week on Wednesday. You may have heard the budget or seen the article in the paper about our current budget status. We are showing a deficit going into 24-25 into the budget cycle. Back early in the beginning of the year, the city council established a number of goals for the city this year, and one of those was Parks and Rec and community services. So in order to address that goal, we were looking at what does it take to create a Parks and Rec department, all the work that was done prior to this commission being formed to identify what a Parks and Rec department could look like, how do we realize that vision. And that's going to take revenue, it's going to take resources to make that happen, to make sure that we have enough resources to support our recreation programs, all of our nonprofit groups that support programs, our cemeteries, our parks, our open space, the plaza, our arts programs, all that fits within that umbrella of Parks and Rec that we want to enhance. So in order to do that, I'm recommending to the city council that we put a sales tax measure on the ballot in November. And what that would be is a half-cent sales tax that we'd be proposing for just within the city limits. And wanted to give you a little sense of why we're doing that. The budget that I proposed or presented last year, or a few months ago, that was approved by council, showed about a $3 million deficit going into next year. And that's ongoing, so $2 to $3 million ongoing into the future. So that's a structural deficit. So if we don't fix that through additional revenue or cuts, basically we'd have to make some serious cuts moving forward in programs and services that we offer the city. And that's due to a number of things. One, our CalPERS, CalPERS liability, which is a retirement system over time, has increased dramatically across the board throughout the state. We also had our public safety contracts, our police and fire contracts have increased this past year more than anticipated, which is causing some of that budget decrease. In addition, we've had a decrease in revenue. So there's sales tax and property tax, which makes up a lot of our revenue, including our TOT, which is from our hotels. All that is projected to go down. So we saw a spike after COVID of people wanting to go out and spend money and stay in hotels and buy a lot of things. We're seeing a reverse in that. So a lot of people are holding back, spending less, and staying less in hotels. So that's affecting our budget and our general fund, which is compounding the issue that we're seeing going into our budget process. So addressing the structural deficit is critical. And so in order to maintain services that we have and to enhance our existing services, we need to identify that revenue source. So the half-cent sales tax that we'll be proposing would generate about $3 million a year to the city. That would be able to be used for parks and recreation programs, other services, and offset any other additional increases in public safety that we're seeing. So it would allow us to maintain but also enhance services that we've talked about with this commission, but also that we've talked about citywide. One of the things that's important about this tax is that it would not be applied to purchases considered as essential, such as housing, groceries, prescription medications, utilities, and personal services. So none of those would be affected by this sales tax, and so it's an important piece of this. I also want to touch on the cap. So one of the important things that we need to look at when we look at sales tax is that the state requires that nobody goes above 10.5%, and right now we're at 9%. So if we do a half-cent sales tax, that would be 9.5. But the voters just recently approved Measure H, which is a fire tax. That was a half-cent sales tax countywide. So that goes on top of that. So now we're at 10%. So we have about half a cent left in that capacity. And so part of bringing this item to City Council now is that we want to lock up that half-cent sales tax for the community and keep it within this community before other regional taxes come in and take away the ability for us to raise revenue within our city. Some cities have reached that cap already, and so they've eliminated that ability for them to go out and ask for additional tax revenue from sales tax. So if we can get ahead of this and try to keep that tax revenue here locally, it's important. We did do polling on this, and if you are interested to see the polling results in graphic format, it is in the packet that we released for City Council on the agenda. It's been posted online. You can see that. And we'll be presenting it in detail on Wednesday night at the City Council meeting, so you can get a sense of what the polling data is. But it's essentially, it is favorable in terms of the community understanding the need to raise taxes to provide services and enhance services for the community. Over 200 people were interviewed for this. 64% of the respondents said that they feel the city's going in the right direction, and there was over 62% felt that we need to raise funds to be able to increase services for the city. In order for this to pass, we would need a 50+1 vote, so we would just need a majority to pass. It is not a special tax. A special tax would require a 2/3 vote, and so since this is a general tax, the City Council would have the ability to utilize for any services for the city that it's 50+1. I did want to touch on the use of those funds. It will be at the council discretion on how those funds are used. I will be bringing forward a budget that includes those funds if this does pass in November. But we have made it clear through the budget process that we want to sustain our services, sustain our public safety levels, but we also want to enhance services, particularly around parks and recreation. And that's why I'm coming to you all to let you know that this is going forward. There has been interest from this commission and from people in the community of how we enhance the services, both our recreation side, but also our parks and plazas and things that we find dear and are critical for our community. And so that's something I'm committed to, and if this does pass, we'll identify ways that we could do that, working with this commission, potentially a new staff person dedicated to parks and recreation that can support this commission, support the work we do, and start looking at long-range planning for how we maintain and enhance our public spaces. So I just wanted to give you a quick overview that is going to the City Council. Again, I'll have more information and more detail I'll present on Wednesday night if you're interested in watching that. It will be the last item of the night, unfortunately. It's the way it goes. We have a couple of other items we have to deal with on Wednesday. But if you're interested, you can tune in on Zoom, you can tune in on the TV channel, or you can show up in person Wednesday night starting at 6 p.m. And I'm happy to answer any questions for you.
I just had a quick question. What is the projected deficit in the budget that you're projecting for 24-25?
For 24-25, I have a $2.8 million deficit, and going forward, it's around 2.1%, and that's based on projections. The primary driver on that is really the projections and what the growth is on TOT and revenue stays and hotels and our sales tax. And we did meet with all the restaurants and businesses and hotels, and they're seeing the same thing. So everyone's starting to see a downturn, and everyone is starting to see people pulling back on expenditures. So instead of buying 2 bottles of wine when you're going out, you're buying one maybe, or just doing a tasting and going home. So we're seeing that across the board right now. And so we have to be conservative on our projections so we don't dig ourselves into a bigger hole. Yeah.
I have a question too. Is there a duration to the length of that sales tax?
Yeah, the recommendation would be that it would be until the voters repeal it, so it would be ongoing. It is hard to do a revenue measure that would go to support ongoing revenues and then pull it back. It puts the city in a really tough spot 5 years down the road for that. Unfortunately, costs are not going down, and I think you're all seeing that. And the same thing's happening for cities. Across the board, cities are facing the same situation. So you'll see in every city, everyone's looking at various types of taxes to address. Some are looking at TOT, some are looking at expanding business tax. For us, sales tax is probably the best approach for us to do what we need to do in the short term.
Have you identified other sources of revenue besides the sales tax?
Yeah, we've looked at a number of different approaches. We looked at business tax, we looked at TOT, we've looked at vacant parcel tax. That's something that was brought up earlier. A lot of those don't really solve the issue that we're trying to accomplish here. It would barely get us to the point where we can sustain. It doesn't take those off the table. We are, down the road, we could look at adding 1% on TOT. That's the hotel tax, and we're second highest in the county right now. Hillsburg is just 1% above us, but we're right up there at the top at, I think, around 14% for tourists when they stay at hotels. The other thing that we're looking at, we just hired a cemetery manager, Caroline Fulton, which we're hoping to bring and introduce her to you all soon. She is taking on the cemeteries to try to turn those around to bring in revenue and make sure that those are self-sustaining. That the cemeteries do have an impact on the general fund long term. So that's another way to essentially offset cost and generate revenue where it's there and not have an impact on the general fund, which would help us as well. But we're continuing to look for areas where we can generate revenue. We are going to be doing a fee study next year. Actually, this year. I'm sorry. We've commissioned an RFP that's out on the street to look at all of our fees for our planning, building, engineering, demand fees for development. All those need to be reviewed. So we'll look at, are we collecting the right amount of fees to be able to do the things we need to do moving forward.
So I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. Would the next year worth of money made back from the new sales tax, that'd be put towards the current deficit, and then after that it'd go towards the improved spending in terms of park and rec in that area?
So we're projecting a deficit every year, and so what would happen is this would go into the general fund, and then my job would be to prepare a balanced budget each year that encompasses that new revenue with the new programs and services that we want to support. So part of that means we'd have to shift some priorities and potentially stop doing other things or realize that our projections were off. So if we do have more tourism and we have more people spending money, things could change. So every year we'll take a look at it and revise those numbers. But essentially the goal would be to bring a budget forward next year if it passed with that new revenue that would have, here's how we balance the budget, but here's the additional services that we're also expanding based on that new revenue. But it is a fluid thing. And so one thing that I will let you know is that we will be going back to the council, I believe quarterly at this point, to give them updates on where we are with sales tax and TOT. We get numbers in various times throughout the year. Property taxes are usually months behind. They lag pretty far behind. Sales tax lags, I think, 2 months behind. TOT we get fairly regularly. So the numbers are hard to pin down at a moment's notice, but we'll start to see trends and we'll start to see how the revenue is coming in. I'll put that back into our projections and then we'll revisit. And that'll lead us into the next budget cycle where hopefully we'll have a more representative sample of what the true revenue is, what we can spend, and how this additional revenue could enhance the services that we need. And I'll just say right now that if we do talk about enhancing parks and rec services, we will work with this commission to hear what your concerns are, where you feel there are gaps, where we can be doing better, so that I can look at structures and identify staffing needs to be able to accomplish that moving forward. So.
No further questions?
Okay.
Well, thank you very much, David. That was very informative.
Thank you. And again, more information to come on Wednesday. If you have questions after that, I'm happy to come back. Just let us know, and I'll come and show up and answer questions. Thank you.
Our next presenter is Becky Spear to talk about shade structures in the plaza. Hi, Becky.
Hi. Excuse me. Thank you. Yeah, there it is. Perfect. Thank you. Wonderful. So good evening, commissioners, and thank you for having me. My name is Becky Spear. I'm a resident of Sonoma. and a mom of a very active 7-year-old boy who loves to partake in all of the parks in town. I'm here today to present a project that I think is essential to the health and safety of our community and visitors, which is the installation of shade structures over the playgrounds. Specifically today, I'd like to talk about what locals lovingly refer to as the little kid playground on the Plaza. That would be the one that is on the west side that's smaller. The goal is to enhance safety and comfort of our children, the families who frequent this beloved space. So the project aims to reduce the surface temperatures of playground equipment, provide a safer and more enjoyable environment for children and families, and to increase playgrounds' usability year-round. Sorry, there's cords in front. So we know that the Sonoma Plaza attracts like 500,000 people, visitors, families, tourists, everybody each year. By providing shade over this playground, we would improve safety and comfort for children, again, enhance the attractiveness and the usability of that playground, and promote the health and well-being and social interaction of our community. We can go to the next slide, please. Thanks. And then additionally, not just the safety and comfort, reducing the risk of injury as well. The importance of this project, I can't overstate, especially after the last 2 weeks of really hot temperature. Our summer temperatures average between 85 and 90 degrees, with highs in the last probably 4 years. Most days are in the 80s and 90s. We rarely get cooler temp days anymore. In the last 2 weeks, more than half of the days in Sonoma have been over 90 degrees, and I think 4 or 5 of them have been over 100. The data I'm able to get was actually from Santa Rosa Airport because we don't have that logged in town, so it was a little bit lower. Just knowing the area, Sonoma's hotter. These high temperatures, of course, can cause the equipment to reach dangerous levels up to 189 degrees, which obviously poses a serious risk for children. According to a Texas Tech study, shade structures can actually reduce the surface temperatures up to 70 degrees, thus decreasing the risk of burns, heat-related illness, and encouraging more outdoor play and activity. If you could go to the next. Reach 150 degrees, which is very hot. It takes just a minute at 140 degrees for a burn, 3 seconds at 170 degrees. This picture is my son, Aaron, in 2019, just before his second birthday. That was taken at Olsen Park. Early afternoon, wasn't really hot. You can see there's shade. But he climbed up to the top of the structure, touched it, screamed out for me. He had thankfully not severely burned himself, but it was hot enough that he, as a 2-year-old, knew that it was too hot to go down. And then for a couple of years, actually didn't want to, or was very cautious about going on any of the playgrounds because he knew if it's sunny out, it's going to be hot, I'm going to burn myself. So if a 2-year-old can figure that out, I think we can work to come up with a solution. Tuesday nights, the plaza's abuzz with families, small children playing, enjoying the little kid playground, and that's during the peak hours. 3 o'clock is our hottest hours. The market starts at 5 o'clock. It's been baking, and there's no shade on that playground. There's beautiful trees around it, but the sun just beats right down on that playground. And the swings are quite hot. We can go to the next, thank you. So playground shading is, if you look around, it's becoming the norm. It's recommended by numerous playground safety guides, including the National Program for Playground Safety SAFE Framework for Playground Safety, as well as the Public Playground Safety Handbook, which is published by the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission. And of course, the American Academy of Dermatology warns of the dangers of prolonged intense UV rays, which can lead to skin cancers. So the next couple slides, so here is Pioneer Park in Novato. You can see they have, just want to show you guys some examples. Pioneer Park in Novato has these sort of umbrella looking shades that I think blend in really nicely. It's not too much. We can go to the next slide. This is Town Park in Corte Madera, which has a more traditional sail shade. And then Northgate Park in Sacramento also has this like sail shade that's tenting the entire structure. Community involvement, is the cornerstone of this. I've received support from numerous local parents, Sonoma Valley Women's Club, as well as members of Rotary and Impact 100. This playground was actually installed by Rotary. And I'm here to hopefully get your support as Parks and Rec to do something about this. The estimated cost for initial installation is about $10,000. I don't have real hard numbers because I don't know what company we would need to go with or any of that, but in my research, about $10,000. Funding sources can be grants, donations from local businesses, community members, municipal budgets allocated for park improvements. I met with, prior to this meeting, I actually applied to Rotary for their grant in the spring cycle, and they had a lot of positive things to say and really supported this project, but right now, because I don't have firm numbers, they weren't able to grant the money at this time, but encouraged me to reapply this spring. The design structure should prioritize functionality, durability, and aesthetics, complementing the existing landscape. I know we're doing a lot of improvements in the plaza. I'm excited about the much nicer trash cans and the more bike racks, and I think this would just add to it. Some people have asked, why not just plant trees to provide the shade? And to answer that simply, the need is too urgent to wait 20 to 30 years for a tree to grow enough to provide the shade that we need now. Additionally, that poses some risk. I've been at the park before when some of the tree branches have fallen down. So we don't want to add more hazards. In summary, I ask your support. This is Aaron, I think last year. And I thank you for listening. I just ask for your support as we make this a safer community for everyone who lives here and everyone who's visiting. Any questions?
Do they, with the shades that are basically sails, do they remove those in the winter? Because many times, part of the winter issue is you want some warmth for the kids when they're in there. So I'm just curious about that.
That's a great question. I don't know specifically if all the parks take them down. That's certainly something that can be inquired about when looking into the engineering of the companies. I can't imagine they wouldn't be removable. But that's a great point. In those winter months, we do want a little bit more warmth.
I know you specifically mentioned I think you said Western, the small playground. Was the quote for just the small one, or was it the small one and the big one?
That estimate is just for one park, one playground. But I've also, I saw estimates that ranged from like a couple $1,000s up to $10,000. So It's really about the materials that you use, the size of the structure, all of that. I know that there's going to be structural engineering that needs to be considered, all of that.
Any further comments or questions? Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Becky. Our next presentation is by Nick Kerner from the Valley of the Moon Park Riders Union.
Good evening, Council. Thank you for having us this evening. My name is Nick Kerner, along with my colleagues Jeff Valfer and Eric Muzzy. We're here representing the Valley of the Moon Park Riders Union, and we represent the skateboarding community here in Sonoma. Our goal is to, our mission rather, is to provide a strong foundation upon which to build a thriving skateboarding community in Sonoma Valley. Next slide, please. So some of our current initiatives. We orchestrate community cleanup days. We do minor repairs to concrete, other things that are in need of repair. Over about 2.5 years ago, we recently removed the fence to address safety concerns, as well as improve the aesthetic of the park. We do community building events, youth events. We establish fundraising partnerships. We're currently fundraising with the Sonoma County Parks Foundation, and we hold individual fundraising events. Thus far, we've raised about $15,000 just through community contributions. Next slide, please.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jeff Valfer. Thank you for having us here today. So, skate park is important to our community because it's accessible to all populations. Skateboarding in and of itself has a low barrier of entry. You get yourself a skateboard and you can go do it, meet some new friends, and there you go. It provides a safe and equitable space, typically full of a lot of diversity. Everybody's welcome. Promotes exercise. It's creative and in a positive environment. I've been a skateboarder most of my life, and then through my professional years stopped doing it. My son, who's 6, loves playgrounds as well, and shaded spots, which we're going to talk about why that's important here. But with that said, got me back into skateboarding a handful of years ago, and at 6 years old, he's not really doing a lot of team sports right now, but as a skateboarder, when he's out at the skate park with all of these guys and all of his friends, that's his team, and he's learning encouragement and just getting everybody excited and pushing everybody to do their best and be as inclusive as possible. So it's one of these places that just truly promotes, in my opinion, and in my life experience, a real positive environment for the community and everybody that's there. And skateboarding as a sport, as we all know, has changed dramatically in the last 20 years, being like soon to be a cornerstone in the Olympics as far as I'm concerned. So we'll see. It's going to be a big one in Paris. It's my son's Sandlot. Next slide, please.
Next slide, please.
Thank you for your time.
Just a brief history about our existing park, and this is the reason why the city would potentially be interested in being involved with the project. Though the skate park currently sits in county land, originally the skate park was a city project. I bought some documents.
I can pass those out.
So our park was originally built in 1999. We had some problems with the initial pour of the skate park. The concrete was initially deemed unusable, and the park sat for about a year while it was being repaired. And what we're left with now is kind of a patchwork because of all the repairs that were made. So this resulted in somewhat of an underutilized facility, and because of the patchwork, we have some major issues with the concrete that would not be apparent, that would not be present in a standard skate park that was executed correctly the first way. As you may be able to see in this illustration here, there's 3 round bowls in the lower section of the park, and you can kind of see some of that patchwork that exists. So there's some pretty major infrastructure issues that have arisen from this. the original agreement with the city and the county, the city had committed to pay $200,000 over 20 years. That agreement was ended 10 years into the skate park, so the county was left to maintain the park themselves, and were unable to keep up with the needs of the facility. And this is why we are here asking the city to contribute to our future plan, which Eric will explain to you.
Hello, my name is Eric Muzzy. I'm a Sonoma resident. I'm a skateboarder and I'm a designer. And here, this slide shows our conceptual design study. The approach here is to illustrate a phased park expansion. And our phase 1 goal would be to improve the existing park area through a handful of design updates, and also to expand along the northern and western edges of the park, basically at the same grade level as the existing park there. Phase 2, we hope to take advantage of the existing topography and add a lower terraced park area around the southern and eastern edges of the park there. In addition, we're showing a visitor area, which could be located between the bike park area and the skate park. This area, it has really nice shade from all those existing trees there, and we think it could provide a safe and comfortable spot for visitors or spectators. Next slide, please. And here are our fundraising goals. The attempt is to be aligned with the design that we just showed. And so the total target for the park expansion is currently $525,000. The idea is that this could be phased over multiple fiscal years if needed, and the design phasing could be tied to the funding. We're anticipating volunteer labor to reduce costs. I think you see a few of the volunteers here. As Nick mentioned, our current fundraising partner is the Parks Foundation, and we were encouraged that supervisors recently committed $300,000 for Maxwell's Phase 2 engineering, and we're hopeful that some of that budget could be allocated to assist with park expansion. And pointing out also that if city funding was allocated, then that would give us the opportunity to pursue matching grant funds. Next slide, please. So, thanks for the opportunity to present our efforts. We appreciate your time.
I would like to know, what is your annual rate of visitors?
Annually, I don't have exact figures. I would say definitely in the thousands, probably 5,000 to 10,000 a year.
And then what is the maintenance budget you have right now? Do you have any idea of what you're currently needing to upkeep it at this level, the new level?
So currently we have no maintenance budget. All these efforts have been completely volunteer. So we rely on donations for materials from local businesses, volunteer efforts. Our hope is that if we execute this design properly this time around, that there will not be nearly as much need of maintenance. Like I mentioned, most of the maintenance is due to the fact that the repairs were made and the repairs were insufficient. So.
And then one more question is, do you already have approval to expand within Maxwell?
We do, yes.
Okay.
Yes, so our concept design has been approved by the county. We are currently waiting to do the engineering because there's the other components of the Maxwell expansion. So once the BMX pump track catches up to where we're at, then we will be doing engineering. But yes, the footprint has been approved and the concept design has also been approved.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Just before you guys take off, I had a question or two. Cathy, can you go back a couple slides, please? That's a good one right there.
Oh, this one?
Yeah. And this is showing repaired areas or areas that have not been repaired.
This is a current overview of the park. So those are areas that have not been repaired, or at least not sufficiently.
And then of the usable space in the park, based on the fact that there's work that needs to be done, how much of it's unusable?
You mean how much of it is currently unusable?
What percentage, yeah, just to give me a rough idea.
Currently, the park is technically usable. I would say that skateboarders are used to conditions that are not necessarily ideal, so people work around them. But the section that I pointed out earlier, the 3 bowls there in the middle, those would constitute the worst area of the park, which is our main focus of phase 1 of our concept. So those areas were what we call in skateboarding as transition, so a flat area to a vertical position. And that is kind of the hardest to execute when building the park. So if the contractors, which they were not in this case, experienced in this sort of building, then you end up with that being the most problematic area.
Okay, so the 3 bowls that are there have problems right now, but they're currently being used.
They are currently being used. Yes.
And did you do an estimate? Is the 200,000? No, that's not. But have you done a cost estimate for what the price would be to just to just repair the portions that are currently?
To repair just the bowls, we're looking at probably a rough estimate of 80 to 85,000. Okay. And yeah, so while all the improvements we're having in Maxwell, we figured that it would be a good time to not only improve but also to expand. So.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay.
I had one other quick question. So what's your total funding gap for this? You mentioned you had 15,000.
Yeah, 15,000, and the county is still working on more money from the supervisors. But yeah, so we're looking, probably another 500,000 total for the build itself.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then so the 300,000, that's for all additional improvements to Maxwell. So that wouldn't
The
be
500, yes, yeah.
No, the
Oh.
300,000 that was approved by the supervisors.
So the 300,000 for that was approved. That's for the engineering of all of Phase 2 for the Maxwell improvement. So that includes the BMX pump track as well as a new pickleball court.
So does that include the skate park at this point?
The engineering, yes.
Okay.
The engineering before the build, yes.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Going over those numbers is kind of confusing, actually.
Okay.
So if there's any way that you could circle back to us, maybe in writing with a big list, so we can see what each piece is, where's your shortfall? Is there a plan B and C if you don't get the money, the amount that you're looking for?
Yeah, we can certainly
Terrific.
provide that in writing. Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks again. Next on the agenda is the consent calendar. So all items listed on the consent calendar are considered to be routine and will be acted upon by a single motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless members of the committee, staff, or public request specific items to be removed for separate action. And what we have is to receive the minutes of the special meeting of April 22nd, 2024.
We need a motion.
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
You have to turn your...
Second.
Okay. Commissioner Izetta?
Aye.
Youth Member Mellinger?
Yes.
Commissioner Mizuraka? Commissioner Rausch?
Aye.
Vice Chair Tolbert?
Yes?
Commissioner Wellender?
Yes.
The motion passes 6-0-0-0-2. I didn't do that last time because of the 2 missing people.
Okay. So to our regular calendar, we have a request for approval of tree removals at 420 Lucca Court and 466 France Street. So I'd like to turn this over to Michael Berger.
Thank you. The commission's familiar with rehearing a tree application. we did this last meeting, and it was for a set of circumstances that came in after we had given a verdict that the tree removal would not be approved, and we wanted exploratory work done on the roots. This first item tonight at 420 Lucca Court is similar to that. And when we gave the homeowner who requested the item, when we gave them the verdict, they got back to us and said, I don't believe that the commission realized one of the reasons that this tree has been requested to be removed, and it's close proximity to the water meter. And recently, we have had a application that we approved for removal of a liquid amber tree that made me reflect on this and add it back to our agenda. The liquid amber, as you might recall, and for the new commission members, the applicant stated that she brought this forward 10 years ago and was denied. And then she brought it forward again after that and was denied. And the third time that she brought it forward, when the asphalt in the street out in front of the tree, along with the curb, gutter, and sidewalk, had all been damaged, we approved the request for the application. And in light of that, I thought it was a good idea to revisit this tree. The sidewalk has started to get damaged. And because of the proximity to the water meter box, I talked to the owner, and they asked, and I agreed to bring this back to the commission for consideration, further consideration, and potentially agreeing to the removal of the tree. As the commission knows, we are currently taking a relook, and some of you have been involved in the tree standards for planting trees in the city. When we adopt these standards, one of the items that Public Works is going to be recommending is to have a offset from any sort of utility infrastructure that is in the park strip out in front of the house. And there will be other requirements too that will be brought into the ordinance that Jennifer Gates from Community Development is currently working on. One of the options, or one of the criteria that's going to be there, is an offset to any sort of utilities like gas, electric, or water. This tree will be too close for it to be planted in this location. And what the owner has agreed to is to plant a 24-inch box on their property, either in the park strip if there's room and not enough utilities that they could put it in, 10 feet plus or minus away from existing utilities, or on their property. And so this is a rehash of what we discussed at the last meeting, and I'm just bringing it before the commission tonight for discussion, questions. In addition to the PowerPoint that we have up on the screen, there's also an arborist report, and Bartlett has provided that. And if you haven't had time to look at that, we could scroll through it. If you have any questions, staff's available to answer them. And then also we have a little drawing of where the tree is with respect to the front, which is pretty apparent on these two pictures that we've included for 420 Lucca. And then, is the homeowner in the audience tonight? They are not. So I have talked to them, and I have basically given most of the information that was conveyed during that conversation. And that concludes staff report unless there's any questions.
I have a question. Forgive me if I missed a comment on where the replacement tree would be planted.
That could be on private property or in the park strip, the landscape strip in front of the house, which is where it currently is, just further away from the water meter.
Because that's something that I would want to know before voting on this guy. You know, if they're going to put it in their backyard, if they're going to, you know, if they can put it anywhere on their property that they want. I mean,
I think the default is to put it in the park strip, just not knowing where the other utilities are currently. That is TBD, because you got sewer, water, and gas
Sure,
to contend with.
Makes
And
sense.
potentially communications. But I believe what the owner's intention is to put it in the park strip, if not, put it in the front yard, close to where the current tree is.
okay. Is there anything in the tree ordinance about if you have to replace a tree in another spot where it's supposed to be? And
Guidelines in terms of like offsets to utilities and things like that, and overhead lines?
no, I just mean, is there anything in the tree ordinance about if someone can't replace a tree in the spot where it was? Is there some stipulations as to where they can or cannot put it? I don't mean in regards to utility issues, I just mean, as I say, can they put it anywhere on their property that they want?
Well, this tree's in city property currently, and it's owned by the city, maintained by the homeowner. So my preference would be to put it back in the park strip
Agreed.
in a similar location, provided that there's no utilities there. If that wasn't acceptable, then what I would do is want to locate it as close to the park strip as possible on the other side of the sidewalk.
So but that stipulation isn't in here. So if we approve, we're not approving the stipulation. I'm just trying to be clear on what we're doing. The other thing is, as we've discussed a few times before, and I know it's a little bit of an opinion thing, but apparently the 15-gallon, even if it has to be staked, has a better chance of survival.
Well, that was discussed at a previous meeting, and there was different perspectives on that.
Right, I agree. It is mentioned in the tree ordinance. So I'm just bringing that up because it's part of the tree ordinance, so.
And specifically that the tree ordinance states a 24, that
15-gallon.
is preferable over a 24-inch box.
It says, at a minimum, 1-to-1 ratio in a 15-gallon box size for each 6 inches of tree diameter. And in this case, it's a 7-inch, so it doesn't matter, but it does, the tree ordinance does talk about 15-gallon. And in considering the fact that by a couple of different sources, including John, once he said it has to be staked. I'm just bringing that up because personally, I'd love to see trees have the best chance of survival.
Concur. And that could be worked into it, that it be planted in accordance with the existing tree ordinance unless approved by Public Works.
Okay, great.
Has John weighed in on this reapplication?
He wrote the original arborist report. And I believe the recommendation, based on the damage that is visible, the date, location of each tree. Oh no, that's the wrong report. Sorry about that. He has not on this one. Unfortunately, he is not going to be here tonight. And we could get his recommendation on this, though.
But your recommendation is to work with the homeowner on their most recent.
I believe so. And part of the reason why I've taken that perspective is because of this issue that we have with the liquid amber on 4th Street. And I think that the further that we push the can down the road in terms of a tree that's been identified to have potential problems in the future, we let them get bigger, and it's more of an impact when we do take it out. And so I want to adopt the portfolio of let's plant smarter and put them in the right spaces, make sure that we have the protection in there for the root barriers, and that all of our details for planting trees reflect those. And this is what we're currently working on with community development, special commission meetings with all 3 commissions, and taking that entire tree ordinance, which is fairly complex, and updating it to today's conditions.
Mike, it'd also be helpful for myself as a new individual on here, commissioner, to understand what types of trees you're talking about when you talk about the 15 gallon, the 24 box, and what kind of the growth rates of those trees look like in terms of how long do they grow, what kind of shade. Just, it helps me in terms of thinking about how it's going to replace it, how soon it'll actually have an impact in a positive way visually, as well as shade on the sidewalks and the beauty of it. If there's a list of it, or I just want to get an idea what kind of trees they are. Please.
Yeah, sounds good. And that's variety also? Variety also?
Yeah, it's similar to what she said too. I'm trying to also understand how well they'll survive relative to the root spread, relative to the location and the width.
Yeah, and this is not an exact science, and this is undergoing a lot of change based on trees that were planted 20, 30, 40 years ago. And over in Napa, we had a full crew of 7 people that primarily what they did 5 days a week was go around, remove concrete and replace it and cut down trees. Because probably 95% of the sidewalk damage over there and displaced sidewalks is a result of a tree root. And there's a huge backlog on that. Sonoma is much better situated than that, but what we're doing is to get all this moving forward in the proper direction. We're taking a look at our sidewalk program. We're taking a look at our tree planting program. And what we want to do, like I alluded to a second ago, is have a comprehensive set of details that are reflected in our standard plans that include the proper trees to be planting under, when you have 15 vertical foot of clearance issues, when what is a small tree that could be planted in those areas, a medium-sized tree that has a little bit more room to grow, a large-sized tree that can grow to 150 feet tall, etc., and then putting the proper root barriers in on the right sides of the tree to promote growth in the proper directions. Yeah, and it's a complex thing to get right. And if you don't, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, you end up taking the tree out. Yes, Commissioner Mizuraka.
I can also comment on the current status of the city's recommended tree list, which many agree isn't the best list, especially considering the climate going forward. I actually got the UC Master Gardener recommended tree list for the next 150 years for our area, and been trying really hard to push it through. I actually have been waiting on John Meserve to go over it, but it's ready to go. It also includes small, medium, and large trees, lots of natives, obviously, and then tons of directions on how best to nurture the tree, including where to plant what kind of tree. Does it belong in a median strip, things like that. So we're this close to having this beautiful list.
Yeah, and then also, what does a tree look like 1 to 2 years down the road? Because if you can get the plant establishment that functional and effective, usually the tree will be fine on its own. And if the owner's in to preserve the tree for 1 to 2 years, then they're probably going to be on board to do the little bit of maintenance that's required to get the thing past that.
They're required to keep it alive for a certain period of time, according to the tree ordinance.
And just making sure that the proper vehicles are in place to make sure that that happens.
Is there further discussion? Do we have a motion to approve or not approve?
Yeah, what staff is recommending tonight as an action is a motion to approve or not approve, and just making a motion to approve and not passing would take care of the not approve. But having a motion to approve the removal of the tree and the replacement of a commensurate tree that's approved by the arborist in a commensurate location that's approved by the arborist.
Just one more question. Who then provides the stipulation in writing to the homeowner that you do? Is that what happens? Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Yes.
I move to approve staff's recommendation.
Second.
Was that you, Jeffrey? Just to make sure. Okay. Commissioner Izetta?
Approve.
Youth Member Mellinger?
Yes.
Commissioner Mizuraka?
Aye.
Commissioner Rausch?
Aye.
Vice Chair Tolbert?
Yes.
Commissioner Wellender?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes 6-0-0-0-2. Thank you.
Okay, next up would be the approve the tree removal permit at 466 France Street and replace it with a 24-inch box tree from the city's approved tree list or the denial of the permit.
Yeah, and a little history on this. This is a new application that we're seeing for the first time tonight. I'm not sure if anybody has had a chance to go by and take a look at it. Our staff arborist, John Meserve, was contracted by the owner of the property to go out and do an assessment of these fairly large redwood trees that have caused damage to the swale on the property, and also pavers that were installed between the house and the tree. And they're concerned about the damage to the foundation of the house. And the arborist recommendation is, and I'll just go ahead and read it, it's based on the damage that is visible to date, the location of each tree, the current size of each tree, and the expected future growth of each tree. They are all candidates for removal at this time. Delaying their removal will only allow more damage to occur. Removing fewer than all 4 trees will cause damage to the remaining root system and could cause the remaining trees to become unstable and more likely to fail. There are no mitigation measures that can be employed to address the growth and damage that is expected. These are simply the wrong trees planted in the wrong place. And any questions on any of the information that's in this? I don't really want to take up everybody's time going through the entire report line by line, but we're definitely available to talk about any different paragraphs or photos, etc. And then, is the homeowner present tonight for these? Yes, they are. So they're here to answer questions, and if they want to come up and talk about the situation at all, they're here to do that for you.
The pictures you're showing list 631 4th Street, and the application is for 466 France Street. Are these just adjacent or just a wrong title?
That is an incorrect title.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are they looking to replace or take out all 4 immediately and replace them with 4 trees, or?
There's an approved list that they would have to replace them with based on the tree ordinance, and the arborist is saying they would like to remove all 4 today. That's their recommendation.
Hi, I'm Cindy Troianello. I am the homeowner with my husband, with my husband Greg.
I'm Greg.
The reasons that we're requesting it, we're new homeowners here. We've purchased this house not long ago, and we're really happy to be in Sonoma. We think this place is beautiful, and it's a big reason we've moved here, and trees are part of that reason. However, there's a lot of damage that's happened to our home and property already, and there are other concerns we have in addition that were listed in the arborist report, but and thank you, Mike, for presenting that for us. Would you like to hear a few other reasons that we would be interested to have these trees removed? I mean, when we've had a lot of wind and rain and storms and stuff, we hear big clunks on our house. Those 2 of the trees are about 6 feet from the house. They're very, very close. So the tree roots, I mean, the trunk of this, yeah, the trunk is, of the 2 are very close, but the canopy is directly over the house. And we hear large branches fall on our house sometimes. Plus, we're concerned that trees could become unstable and actually, you know, rip up or fall on our house or our neighbors. As he's mentioned, as Mike's mentioned, there is already damage to the swale, to the pavers between the house and the trees. And what he didn't mention is the rooms that you can see right there are uneven. So the tree, I don't know if you can tell from those pictures. Some other pictures in the application do show the tree roots, the 4 tree roots have, as the arborist called it, heaved, meaning lifted the actual front yard. So that front yard is a hill of tree roots. So it is lifting our house and everything around it. So in fact, you know, the bed that we put in that is uneven in there, and we have to shim it in. Okay, so those are the reasons why. And part of the reason we came here is to make a personal appearance and request that you approve this application. In addition, I want to understand a little bit more about replacing those trees. And I don't know if there's a potential for an exception to replacing the trees, but I'll give you my reasons why I would like to ask for an exception. And these are, number one, as I described, and as you can see on the pictures, the front yard is completely riddled with roots. We'd like to have the trees removed, but I don't know how much it would cost to, you know, take all those roots down and grind all that up and stuff. So as it is, if the trees are removed, the front yard is just roots. So it would not be possible to replant. We would like to replant something. We have pride of ownership in our home, and we love the way it looks now, but we would not be able to plant trees there. We have a pretty small backyard, and we have something like, I counted them before I came, like 12 trees in our backyard already. We're going to be adding a lot more into the backyard. As I said, we're new and we're doing landscaping, so we're adding lots of other foliage and stuff back there to keep it green and beautiful. So that's one, those are 2 reasons. It's not going to be possible to replant there. The backyard is quite small. I don't think we'd be able to replant trees in that backyard. Also, the expense that we would need to go through. As you know, Sonoma is not an inexpensive place to move to, and just coming into town, it was quite expensive to buy a house. Going through this process is, you know, quite expensive, and then removing those trees is going to be enormously expensive. And then to be asked to replace trees in our yard again, and the expense that we'd have to go through, I just feel like it's an awful lot, and we'd like to keep that expense down. In addition, our house is at the end of a private road off of France Street. So we're at the end of a cul-de-sac, and the public does not see our front yard, and nobody else is, you know, benefiting from those trees in our front yard. And then lastly, I understand those trees are there, and I understand reasons why people are asked to replace them. But they never should have been planted there. Something like you had mentioned, Mike. They were planted 6 feet from a house, redwood trees. And over the years, I've wondered why, when they got to be 10 feet tall or 20 feet tall, somebody didn't say, oh, they're getting awfully tall, maybe we should do something about it. And now they are, you know, enormously tall and large. And they really never should have been planted there. So they never should have been there. Do you have any questions for us?
I believe there was already a previous question about replacement, correct? Any other questions for the homeowners?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So I'm a little confused by the recommendation because it's so far removed from the tree ordinance. I mean, clearly, the tree ordinance would require dozens of replacement trees, and I would agree that a variance would be a good idea, but not nothing and not 4 trees. I mean, you're talking about a lot of diameter of trees, and I agree that these were inappropriately sized, but I'm confused by the recommendation for only 4 trees as replacement.
Well, my reaction is, I think John Meserve nailed it, where they're unfortunately the wrong trees in the wrong place. And although it would be a shame to lose them, because they're magnificent, they're just not in the right place. And if we don't deal with it, the potential for damage just increases. As far as the replacement, I think I'd want to hear recommendations from Public Works and the arborists on regarding that.
One thing I will note is if you choose not to stump grind, it's not going to alleviate the foundation issues. Redwoods go extremely deep. And so even if you cut it, you will still have foundation issues if you choose not to stump grind out of personal experience.
Can I respond to that?
Yeah.
So as I understand, as I understand it, the service to remove the trees includes stump grinding and to kill the trees. I think that might be what you're saying, because I did talk to someone and they said if you just leave them, they can grow back and they'll keep growing. So we absolutely will, but underneath the rest of the, I mean, who knows how much roots is in there. I mean, it could be many, many, many feet of roots down. Thank you.
Yeah, and just to clarify the commission's request about staff's recommendation, could you please clarify that?
Are you asking me?
I believe I asked the question.
I think it was Commissioner Mizuraka that
Okay.
wanting to know why we were replacing it with, why the recommendation would be 4 and or less.
No,
I think that the starting point would be the municipal code, which you cited tonight regarding diameter and expected replacement. Yeah, and I mean, this commission has heard previously, and the special commission meetings involving planning, climate, and pros all are addressing the fact that we're trying to promote keeping trees, not the opposite, lose trees in the tree canopy. Granted, these trees were the wrong tree planted at the wrong place. However, they're still part of the tree canopy of the city of Napa, or city of Sonoma, excuse me. And what we want to do is we want to keep cognizant of, and I mean, this is how the subject is being discussed right now by city council and by the 3 commissions, how we keep a similar number of trees in our tree canopy. So the commission's recommendation should take that into consideration. That's been discussed numerous times. And then I think that the starting point would be the municipal code and whether or not the commission would want to deviate from the requirements in the municipal code. Based on the fact that these are very large, it's an abnormal thing to have this many big trees on your property. And that could be something that could be openly discussed with the commission about whether or not a deviation from the code. And I want to apologize for the staff report. The staff report, I don't believe, echoes what's in our municipal code based on the criteria that you discussed with the tree diameter, et cetera. However, this is something that you would typically find in a park, not in somebody's yard. And that probably needs to be taken into consideration too, if the commission were to designate a number of trees different than what is in the current municipal code as a requirement for replanting.
It seems to me that it doesn't make any sense to discuss this further without John Meserve and/or another arborist, because, you know, it takes someone like that to look out the acreage plus the square footage of the house, to massage the code enough to create a variance that makes sense here. Because, I mean, that's a lot of tree to remove and replace with 4 trees, in my personal opinion. I wouldn't be able to approve this personally. I'm not crazy about the recommendation, but I just don't think it makes any sense to do it without an arborist.
Well, thinking a little outside the box, if there's not room on this property for replacement trees, perhaps there's room in a public area that they could replant trees, like, for instance, along the bike path or another city owned place that would benefit from 4 trees.
Yeah, and that's a possibility. I think that the number, and I mean, getting another arborist, as you know, our staff arborist is the one that issued the report for this. He's got a conflict of interest-ish moving forward. But basically, I think that you know, the applicant has discussed the roots that are currently in the yard and the fact that they're going to have to be removed in order to just plant new trees, and not just where the stump is. Grinding the stump is one thing, but then you got redwoods are characteristic, eucalyptus, sycamores, for having surface roots. And having to dig through those roots in order to just plant a tree, is it going to be a healthy environment for the new tree to grow in? But here again, coming up with a number is something the commission could consider doing. And I think that the chair, vice chair has a entertaining idea, worth entertaining, of is there a different location that these could be planted in? Because realistically, what we're most interested in is replacing trees. The location of the property doesn't really matter as much as the fact that we put a new tree in and it becomes a healthy tree one day.
Could we motion to approve today and then have a stipulation written that an arborist would provide recommendations after a site visit once the trees have been removed to recommend what they could plant there?
That's one option. Also, with the caveat that was just suggested of if there isn't adequate space there, they could be bought and donated to be planted elsewhere on city property. And then I think that there's merit to that, because realistically, taking a look at this after they've been removed is something that could probably be fairly easily done. But then coming up with a number of replacement trees, I think would be one of the goals tonight, to attach to that if the commission was prepared to do that.
That goes back
Mike,
to,
Mike,
it
just-
goes back to the size of the canopies of the trees that we select relative to the coverage that we're going to get to kind of eventually grow into this too. I feel for the homeowners definitely relative to the damage that's been done and going to continue to get done. And I noticed the gutter system, the drainage system too. That can cause a huge amount of issues for not just them, but other homeowners in the area. So then I think that's a good idea to try and get some arms around how many trees could be planted to hopefully replace this wonderful grouping.
Have the owners seen the list that is proposed, the tree ordinance list?
This
Or
list
no,
or the
just the-
existing
the
list?
existing list,
Yeah.
excuse me.
I would love to be able to share that list. I don't know if that's legal.
No, it's online.
I know, but it's actually, what I have is actually, do you see Master Gardener list?
No.
The existing city tree list is not great. It's not.
I'm just wondering if they've seen it at all to say, hey, we'd love to select these 6 or whatever, or no? Okay.
But before I came today, I went looking.
Can you use the mic so we can catch you on the, thank you.
Having a sweater issue, sorry about that. Before I came here today, I read the ordinance and I didn't know what a box tree was. So I went looking everywhere in the ordinance for what a box tree was, and then I went searching online for what a box tree is. So, and I went looking for the list of approved trees. So I have not seen them. And I would provide here an extra plea to please don't make us buy more than 4 trees to replace 4 trees that are coming out. You can see how, like Mike said, which was, I thought, quite eloquent, like these trees belong in a park. They never belonged in somebody's front yard. And it's just almost feels like, we bought this house. We saw the trees, we thought they were beautiful, but we wanted to live here. We wanted to live in Sonoma. We liked the house. We liked the area and everything, so we bought the house. And then we found out later about all this expense and damage to the house and foundation on all the utilities underneath and stuff. We said, darn, we have to get rid of them. And so we've been going through an awful lot and going to spend a ton of money on all of this. And we would just really, really appreciate your consideration not to make us have to pay more than absolutely necessary. Thanks.
There is another factor, another ingredient that could go into a variance, and that is it has to be upon the request of the developer and the approval of the city council, the city may accept an in lieu payment of $100 per 15-gallon replacement tree on condition that payments be used for tree-related educational projects or planting programs of the city. So circling back to finding a number of trees that would be a nice compromise from the dozens that the tree ordinance requires. Maybe there could be some kind of package where the $100 per replacement tree, not to dozens of trees, could go towards the Miyawaki potential project or something like that. So some trees on site, and then in lieu payments of $100 or whatever the city council approves that goes of some more trees could go towards planting on public property or immediately or otherwise. Personally, I feel like this is we don't have all the information we need for it, and without John being here, I wouldn't mind kicking it down the road, especially since we're a month closer to the September meeting.
Yeah, and I just, in terms of the arborist being able to guide us tonight on how many trees could be planted in the front yard, I think that that's kind of unattainable at this time, and it may be unattainable even at the next meeting because of the logistics of digging a hole in the yard with existing roots there. And so while he may be able to shed a little bit of light on this, I think that, and I was just looking at, trying to look, a 24-inch box is, a box tree is pretty, it's a standard size, understood by landscapers that can be planted in the ground. It's a matured tree that is supposed to grow faster and be more established than a lot of the trees that you buy in smaller cans. There are different schools of thought on that. They are fairly standard prices, and a box is commonly known among landscapers about what size you're talking about. I've planted quite a few of them on different CAP projects, and it's the more mature, established trees that you're looking for. Like I said, I was just trying to get a few prices on those, but I just started a couple of seconds ago. It's a standard price for each individual tree. It varies, I'm sure, from tree to tree, but we're talking about a finite amount of money. As far as I'm concerned, one of the real expenses is putting the thing in the ground and taking care of it for the first couple of years and making sure it doesn't die. And getting back to what the chair originally suggested is, I think if the commission could decide on a number, then we could basically accept those and plant those at a site TBD along a creek or in a park. And in lieu of the applicant placing them in the yard where they've discussed the different issues with doing that. And I would defer to any additional commentary an arborist could provide to us if we had to get involved anymore.
So what's our next step? I mean, to make a motion that encapsulates what you just said, approving the removal of the trees, and then coming up with a contingency for replacement? Naming how many trees. I mean, I feel silly trying to come up with a number to replace what's there. It's just, it can't really be done.
And I think that's where the commission probably has to be thinking openly about the number. And the applicant is here tonight. They could commit to a number if the commission could come up with it. And this could be written right into the approval of the tree as part of the agreement and memorialized that way. And I think that I want to make sure that the commission is, everybody that's seated has had an opportunity to weigh in on this, and just making sure that we're ready to make a motion and that, you know, the number has been discussed enough if that's going to be stipulated in the approval. I've heard that 4 may not be enough, but just kicking that number around a little bit, and then with the applicant here, being able to try to come up with some sort of an agreement.
Isn't it the replacement number based on the diameter of the tree being removed?
It's 15 gallon per 6 inch, so you can calculate again. I mean,
And that's what she's saying, that would be, 40 trees in there.
no, I totally agree with that. I completely agree with that. I'm just talking about, there's an ordinance for a reason, and I agree that we absolutely need a variance. I'm just throwing things out there as far as what makes sense. In fact, 15-gallon trees are cheaper, as has been discussed before. As long as you stake them, they grow faster and potentially do better because they haven't been in the box as long. So it may be, and that's what the ordinance stipulates too. So it doesn't necessarily have to be 4 24-inch, or however many of this.
I suggest a dozen replacement trees of 15 gallons.
But not necessarily on their property.
No, at an alternate site, that city-owned site. For instance, along the bike path where it might be suitable at a new park. there's a new park going in. There's talk of trees going in at Olsen Park. So I think there's plenty of opportunity to find the right place.
Yeah, I agree with that there's plenty of opportunity to find the right place. And Public Works could be lead on that effort.
So are we saying we would recommend a dozen trees? Can we cap the financial number around that for them and say, you know, if a 15-gallon tree runs from 100 to 250 of what I'm seeing online, some go up to 500, could we say the cap is 2,500 out of pocket for them, or is that not something we're able to do? Because what I would say is like, I don't think that's a fair justification, in my opinion, to put a homeowner responsible for like a $5,000, you know, bill to go then replant these after the damage to their house. So I would like to put a financial cap on it.
Completely agree with that and your suggested amount.
I don't see anybody objecting to that suggestion.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that suggestion. That's awesome. I just like to ask a reduction in the cap of the amount. I thought I was asking to not have to replace 4 trees. I mean, almost feels like we're being punished for buying this house and having this tree problem and trying to resolve it and coming through and all the proper process and all that kind of stuff. And so maybe we could, I'm wondering, well, if you're starting at a dozen trees, I mean, I'd like to ask for 4 or to cap the amount at like 1,000. Thank you. Do you need me for any other questions or anything?
No comments?
I mean, I will say that is a very quick Google search on my part. We have a recommended list as part of the tree ordinance that they could review. I'm sure you could do some due diligence and find creative ways to get 12 trees that are 15-gallon under that budget. But that, again, that is a very quick Google search. But I think you could find things cheaper that would suffice. No?
Have an arborist.
Is this something, for just the number of trees, is this specifically something you want to have written into the tree removal request, or is this something we could push to a later date? Because it seems this is kind of just random that we're making it up on the spot. It'd be nice to put a bit more research into ordinances and such.
Yeah, and as far as researching the ordinance goes, this is the first time that we would have allowed not an in-kind replacement, and researching the ordinance to make sure that the homeowners could donate up to X dollars, up to 12 trees. But I don't think there's anything random about those 2 criteria. We could set the criteria for the dollars, and we've specified how many trees we'd like to get. So if we have a criteria for dollars and it only goes to 6 trees, a 15-gallon size, then that would be what would be allowed. So really just setting the criteria for the amount of dollars that will be expected on the reciprocal donation.
So you're suggesting not to stipulate the number of trees and just stipulate a cap?
Well, we were talking about a cap, and we also threw out a number of a dozen. And I think either one or a combination of both of those would be fine. Up to 12 trees, not to exceed X dollars, is one scenario.
And then I think also just to clarify, Councilor Commissioner Mellinger, the randomness of it is because if they were not awarded a variance, if we were to just stick true to the tree ordinance now, you know, the requirement to plant trees in kind, you know, smaller trees that would populate the area, I mean, it would be financially incredible because of the size of the trees that they're proposing to remove. So that's kind of why we're trying to establish what the cap is. And we don't really have a precedent for it. As per our director, we have always approved in-kind replacements. So we're really trying to work with the homeowner in order to make sure that they're it's feasible.
No, yeah, I understand that. I just heard some different, even around like 12 to 4, I'm hearing different amounts around there. So yeah, I understand that part.
Well, the homeowner, they are facing significant expense just to remove the trees. And we certainly don't want to be onerous by layering on replacement costs, but we do need to replace the trees. I mean, we can't replace them in full, but somewhere in the middle between, you know, $2,500 that Ms. Izetta recommended, the dozen that I threw out, somewhere in there can be something reasonable, I think, to mitigate.
I think we previously had discussed $100 per tree. Am I incorrect in assuming that that was what we had discussed 15 minutes prior? So I think if we could maybe motion to decide that it's $100 a tree, up to 12 trees for replacement, therein lies the cap for financial investment and the cap for number of trees that we're requesting.
And we motion tonight, and then we have in the stipulations from Commissioner Martindale to be able to say that an arborist would come and review the feasibility of these 12 trees, even if it's not at their property. You know, they'd pick the location where it would go.
Yeah, that could happen under Public Works direction and guidance, if the commission agreed to put that into the approval letter tonight.
Can somebody state this convoluted motion? Want to give it a try? I motion that we approve the removal of the trees contingent upon a replacement of up to a dozen trees, not to exceed $1,200 per tree. Oh no, but $100 per tree.
Yeah, and that would just include the purchase price, and we would work it into a future tree planting project sponsored by the city and or volunteers, etc. Charlie, I think you nailed it.
Thanks. Do we have a second?
I second.
Commissioner Izetta?
Aye.
Youth Member Mellinger?
Yes.
Commissioner Mizuraka?
No.
Commissioner Roush?
Aye.
Vice Chair Tolbert?
Yes.
Commissioner Wellender?
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes 5-1-0-0-2.
All right. Thanks for coming out. I hope it works out for you.
Thank you very much.
Next is we're going to receive Olsen Park Rehabilitation Project Update and the ad hoc report out. Ashley, if you will.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ashley Cotter. I'm the Administrative and Project Manager with Public Works. So today I have prepared an ad hoc report out for Olsen Park. That ad hoc was established on March 13th, 2024 at a Pros Commission meeting following Land Culture's presentation at the September 13th, 2023 Pros meeting. So the ad hoc met on March 27th at 2 p.m. and that meeting consisted of Chair Member John Donnelly, Jessica Mizraga, and Baker with Land Culture LLP, and Sonoma City staff to include Mike Berger and Cathy Martindale. Things that were reviewed were the project's initial, the project's initial budget or cost estimate that was prepared by Land Culture LLP, which is approximately $515,000. And then they also reviewed an estimated budget for public works, which would be about $415,000. So discussing ways to scale back the project to reflect $100,000 cut from the cost estimate. So things that were explored were a smaller toddler play feature, smaller trees to be planted where applicable, root barriers for trees where applicable, making the picnic area smaller, and then different options for paved paths. So that was discussed in March, and then on June 28th, 2024, city staff conducted a site visit with Ann Baker with Land Culture LLP, and city staff included Mike Berger, myself, Chris Pegg, operations manager, and Anthony Navarro, park supervisor. And that included an audit of existing and functional irrigation, an informal tree assessment, removal of the big hedge over by the play structure, and discussing a possible water fountain feature placement. Following that, staff also went out there to survey the different the sloping for the paths to provide Land Culture LLP with a full picture of the ADA path requirements in terms of where we would have to focus those efforts on. And then we are also currently working on a task order with Land Culture. That's going to go to council on August 7th, and following approval of that task order, we'll be able to work more with Land Culture to continually move this project and hopefully get an updated cost estimate and be able to bring an update to the September pros meeting with hopefully some different maps and drawings of what the new updated features would look that would be within the Public Works budget. Do we have any questions? Okay. Well, no action needed on your part for this one. This is just an informational update, which is also the same. Can I just roll on to the next?
Yeah, unless the commission would like to do any discussion or questions for staff. That includes staff's report for Olsen.
I had a question not on Olsen, on what is the park by your house called? The one off of like Rockman and Ingram. That Landscape LLP was also working on?
I think you.
Sonoma Valley Oaks?
Yes. Sonoma Valley Oaks, yes, exactly.
Okay, and that would be on the north side of town.
Correct.
Close to Fifth Street West.
Fifth Street East.
Fifth Street East, sorry, yeah.
Yeah. Will we get an ad hoc report on that one as well, or is it just based on progress? Or
Due to staff shortages in the last 6 months, all of the projects that we were working on got a little bit of a backlog. What we're doing right now is we have restarted Olsen. We also have the new park that is under, one of the next items that'll be placed in Land Culture's queue will be the new park and conceptual studies for what kind of park could go there at Fifth and MacArthur. And then last, we're gonna restart Sonoma Oaks. Yeah. And that will automatically get going again as soon as the other two are going. And then we will be giving the commission updates on that as it proceeds forward. But that is the last in the queue currently. It's still there. It just hasn't gotten restarted yet.
I did notice the volleyball court is up and running at Depot. Looks
yeah,
great.
that was in operations queue, and it was just a matter of getting up there and getting that done. And yeah, that is done, and we're moving on to our next project.
Okay, so should we move to the Plaza improvement updates?
I know we only have one person, but you need to ask for public comment.
Oh,
I'm excited that the parks are getting updated.
Thanks, Charlie.
Okay, So moving on to the Plaza updates. So the city recently received grant funding through Prop 68, which is administered through the State Parks Department. The city was awarded a total of $185,015 to be paid out on a reimbursement basis. So how that works is the city does receive the grants, but they need to front the cost for time and materials up front and then submit a payment request. So the city is working on their first payment request for this now. With that, we're also required to provide a 20% grant match. So the total project budget for this was a little over $231,000. So part of this was to procure some updated trash receptacles at the plaza, which I'm sure you guys have seen around there. Those are big belly trash receptacles. So we purchased 27 of those, and that also included placing the precast concrete pads for the trash receptacles and including contract costs for the installation. In addition to the trash receptacles, we also installed 8 bicycle racks and their accompanying bike rack foundations. So we only placed 25 big belly receptacles out there, and we have 2 to be held in stock for placement at either another park or to be utilized as a replacement in the event they need to be replaced and it's outside of their warranty period. And that can be decided upon at a later date. So as part of this staff report, I've also included a diagram so you can see where the trash installations are, which we're kind of having a little bit of technical difficulties. So we'll just roll on through. So long story short, after we did all of those installs, we did have a remaining budget of $18,000, which is great. We did get some feedback that the park benches and picnic tables needed to be replaced. And so after discussing this with our grant administrators, it was approved as a grant reimbursable expense. And what that means is we can now, that's now part of the scope of the project, which is great. So we have discussed with our operations department, and the the boards will be replaced in kind with redwood lumber and stain. So what is out there currently is boards with brown paint. So we don't anticipate any major aesthetic changes to the current look of the plaza. It'll just have a more updated, fresher look with lumber and stain as opposed to lumber and paint. And that is the same for the picnic table and the benches as well. So we're anticipating that the picnic benches and table rehabilitation will be completed around the end of September. And so we can definitely bring an update to the next pros commission and let you all know how we're doing on that.
So all those photos are in the agenda packet. I'm sorry, I don't know what's happening. They're not coming up on the screen, but you guys have them.
For the Olsen project, do you guys also, and other parks that we're renovating, do you plan on doing the big belly trash cans at those as well?
We don't have plans to place them at Olsen Park quite yet. I think Olsen will probably wait and see where we're at with the Rehab with Land Culture LLP. We just have them in storage right now. And, you know, if one of the trash receptacles at one of the parks becomes, you know, in incredible disrepair, we have a great replacement. So we're kind of holding back on placement for those 2 right now to see where the most important need is.
And realistically, the first location that will get those, if they do turn out to be extra, will be Depot Park. Yeah, we'll start at Depot and then basically do an assessment, and we'll be out of cans at that time. So any of those in the future will have to be paid for with the budget expense. Yeah, and then also just to make note tonight, one of the things that we just want to bring to your attention is the fact that we are changing the benches in the plaza. What we're planning on doing is going with a redwood stain as opposed to the currently brown painted wood that's out there now. And we wanted to bring that up for discussion among the commission and see if the commission had any opinion on that in terms of what the feel is for that change to the look in the plaza. And this would be for all the picnic tables, picnic benches, and all of the benches in the amphitheater.
Splinters?
Yeah, that's... Yeah, as long as they're sealed and sanded, I think that will be the biggest complaint we will hear from every single parent.
Yeah, and the current lumber that's out there is susceptible to the same thing, and I guess it's a good point to bring up because I think that you provide an added layer of protection with paint. But here again, if they're sanded and properly stained, I think that would be.
Well, there are different stains too that you can use that provide more
Protection.
durability like paint.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's a good point, and we will look into that.
My experience with stain is that it's ongoing. You're never done with staining. It's like, it's a great look, but, you know, a year from now, you've got to redo it.
Yeah, and definitely, and we're currently doing that for painting also. It isn't an annual thing, like how you bring that up. It's something that we will look into because we're always concerned about maintenance, ongoing, preventative, annual, and we would definitely want to go with the option that didn't require annual restaining.
I have a question about the big bellies that I've asked before. I understand that the city council wasn't crazy about the signage that we recommended and approved for the big bellies. And I recall staff saying that alternative signage was being ordered. I haven't seen it yet. And I walk through the plaza all the time on my way to the trail, and I always see people putting the wrong items in the wrong bins. So clearly, they don't know what the leaf means. Clearly, more signage. In fact, there is extra signage at special event days. When they put out extra bins, there's this really good signage saying, put this in here, don't put this in here, and all that. So what's the status on the signage for the big bellies?
Well, unfortunately, the only status update that I have is that we were working on ordering that. And if it hasn't come up and been placed out there yet, I will check on the status of that, and we'll get an email out to the commission that updates you on what the current status is. Because there was discussion about that. It's being handled in a different department, and we were looking at the different options at one time, and I don't have an update on that tonight. Yeah, but thank you for reminding me.
Well, that kind of leads into my question on the big bellies. What level of cooperation from the public are you seeing with putting the proper refuse into the proper receptacle? Or is anybody paying attention to that?
I think people are paying attention. I'm not sure the commission is aware. We just recently renegotiated the contract with Sonoma Garbage Company, SGC, our local garbage providers. And one of the items that's in there, in the new contract, which we're scheduled to have a meeting with them and start discussing the new contract, the new state requirements that have to be enforced. It includes things there are specifications, stipulations in there for actually looking at and making sure that compliance is present and a mechanism for tracking it. And this is one of the things that we're going to be working on. I have had a couple of good, albeit not formal, reports that people are using the right receptacles. I'm sure some of them are using the wrong ones, and it's probable that a little bit more signage would help cut that down. But what we will be doing is looking at doing evaluations in the future to see, by pulling out different cans and doing an assessment with the garbage company, because they're going to be heading and on the forefront on that, and then doing a tally and seeing where we are and if we have to improve.
Is that contract negotiation also include the frequency in which they're picked up?
It does.
Can you explain, this is just new to me, can you explain to me what the schedule is now? How many times a week? Is it based on each park, or is it?
It's based on each park. And this is one of the things we're going to talk to them about at our introductory meeting with this new contract that we have. Yeah, and this was a major change. Required a lot of effort on city staff to redo this contract that hadn't been rewritten in approximately 20 years, if I'm not mistaken. It had been amended 12 years, and it was amended many times, and it was time to get all the new requirements for the recently passed state bill into the contract. And, you know, this required additional expense on their part. So all that had to be addressed, and it was a huge effort. We just got it approved, I believe, at the last council meeting that we had. And we're just starting negotiations with, or just sit-down meetings. The negotiations are done, but just having sit-down meetings with Sonoma Garbage to discuss things like frequency of maintenance. Is it weekly? Is it every other day? We increased the service in the plaza from 2 days to 3 because the cans were smaller. And, you know, if you go out there on Tuesday night, sometimes you can see some that are overfilling. That's a separate company doing that for the special event. But these are the things that we're going to be looking into, ironing out, make sure that if any cans are overflowing in any of the individual parks, we have to look at increasing the frequency of the visits to do maintenance on them and empty the cans.
Is there any further discussion?
And just one of the other things that I don't think we emphasized tonight was the installation of the new bike racks. That was something that got bought to pros, and those bike racks are in, they're being used. And we're trying to evaluate whether or not we would be, if they're being used enough, that we would entertain putting more in. These are the ones that are basically being put in just as on a trial basis. They're not going anywhere, but the trial is whether or not we want more. And so if they're being used and they're being filled up, we can make an assessment on that at a later date.
You're good, Becky? Okay. Staff comments and announcements? Members' reports and comments? I think we're... Okay. Staff comments and announcements?
Yeah, just something we've alluded to already tonight, that Land Culture LLP is getting back up and going. There was a little bit of a, we had to slow down a little bit on production on the 3 park projects that we currently have. Land Culture is back up in, we're getting them a task order really soon to get moving on Olsen Park again. We're also going to be working on the MacArthur Park, like I discussed earlier, and then we'll move right into Sonoma Oaks as soon as those 2 are going. The objective is to get plan specifications and estimate done for MacArthur, or for Olsen Park, get that project out to bid and potentially under construction. Probably not this fall, but hopefully in the spring. And we'll probably do that work either in the spring or the fall of 25. And we're hoping to, we'll bring something back to you regarding the conceptual studies at MacArthur and Fifth Street and the new park at the next meeting. And it won't be anything conclusive, but it'll be an update as to where the project currently is. And then, like I said, as soon as we get Olsen Park moving on cruise control and with a set schedule, we will be starting to work on Snow Valley Oaks again. And that concludes staff's report.
I'd like to welcome Savannah and Jeffrey to the commission. Sorry, I was combining your 2 names there. It's nice to have a full commission. I mean, we have a couple members missing, but it's really good to have you guys here.
So to verify, our next meeting is September 15th.
Sounds a little late. Oh, we did push back though because of the holiday weekend. Good question.
September 11th.
Oh, okay. Wednesday, September 11th is our next meeting. think that wraps it up. If anybody would like the motion that we adjourn.
You can just do that on your own, Charlie.
Meeting's adjourned, and thank you all very much.
Good job.